Welcome to another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com, where we help you figure out how to reach new people, tell new stories, and create marketing that is done with the human first. And that means you got to do the thinking first. You got to be creative and come up with what you want to say. It's human in the middle because you also have to fight back and forth and be creative and figure stuff out along the way. And then it's also human last because that's when it gets delivered to your audience and when you need to review it and all kinds of stuff too. I haven't talked about that in a while. I think it's a great framework for what we're going to talk about today and this week with Jonathan Aberman. I messed it up. I went somewhere in between.
It's German. Okay. Yeah. Have it again. That's all right.
All right. You said it is pronounced
Aberman.
Aberman.
Yeah.
I wanted to say Aberman. Aberman, we got that right. Jonathan Aberman is the CEO of Upside, which is the human upside of originality and creativity. And he's got some really cool tools that we figured out to how to measure these kind of things and measure the impact and the results of what you can do with human creativity in a world with AI. And I think it's a fantastic topic. You can find them at upside.com or Jonathan Aberman at LinkedIn.
Jonathan at upside.com. If you want to find me, Jonathan at upside.com.
Just email would be great.
Just email.
All right, Jonathan, that was a shenanigans of an intro, but it's setting us up perfectly for a fun conversation because I wanted to do something a little more creative just to start this one because I feel like creativity is a weird thing. It's hard to define sometimes. And I always thought I wasn't creative as a kid because I was like, I don't really come up with anything new. I put like different puzzle pieces together. And so people would say I wrote things funny or I would use words funny and stuff, or I was creative, but I was like, nah, I didn't make that up. I just took this thing from over here and this thing from over here and put it together. And they're like, yeah, I finally had a teacher that's like, that's what creativity is, you idiot. And I thought, I thought you had to make something blank from a blank page that was completely original in order to be creative. How do you define originality and creativity? What do you think it means?
So a little bit of background from the standpoint of I've been around innovation for a long time as a business founder, software investor. I've helped start a lot of tech companies. And you talk about creativity. I think that creativity is a shorthand that a lot of us have been using to try to figure out what do people do that AI can't do. Because we know right now we're being presented with this idea that it's only a matter of time before AI can do everything that humans can do. And people reject that and say, no, that can't be right. And inevitably the conversation comes down to what do humans do? And some people say empathy, some people say various things, but creativity comes up a lot, right? And as I started to think about this, I began to focus on creativity as a behavior. But ultimately, if you're trying to measure human creativity as a behavior, it falls down in an AI world because AI likes to mimic what we think of as creativity. It likes to create, we can call it hallucinations. It creates shared novelty. It creates polished novelty. And it raises a question, well, if you define it as creativity, then it could be emulated. Where does that leave us? And so the scientists that I decided to start Upside with were experts in creativity. And what they said to me was, Jonathan, if you're trying to measure creativity using traditional mechanisms, you're going to fail because every existing test that measures creativity can be cheated now by the LLMs. So if you do a Myers-Briggs or any of these leadership development tests that are all over the place, they're all fixed rubrics. They all have a right or wrong answer, maybe subtle, but there's a right or wrong answer. They've all been ingested by the Gen AI. So you can cheat. Well, you can cheat the test. So if you need a standard that's going to identify who can add value, you have to come up with a new way to measure it. And so they invented a new proprietary LLM that we've got that basically takes output and locates it, and instead of embedding it, figures out the distance between concepts and how they differ, gives us an idea of how somebody solves a problem and how, quote, creative they are, but really the output. How original is the output? How novel is the output? And by shifting the conversation from how you got there to what you do, it now means you can do a couple of interesting things. The first thing is you can introduce AI to the same set idea space and see how humans perform against AI answer the same question. So the first time you see qualitatively when somebody is performing at a level of originality higher than the AI. Never been able to do that. So that immediately you start to see how humans differentiate when they're asked to solve problems and think originally. But the other thing is, as we get more and more into hybrid people and AI working together, you can measure how they improve. And once I saw that and I saw the technology worked, I basically left my role as a venture partner in a fund and said to my partner, I'm going to do this full time because I just felt like this was the most important thing I could do. So originality is outcome. It could be creativity, it can be instinct, it can be judgment, it can be a dog talking to, it doesn't matter. What matters are you doing something special. And I want to point out something because you made a point earlier about creativity, originality, that a lot of people have this idea that I have to be an expander in order to be original. And the answer is that's not the case. Humans, all of us, are wired up to do two things: seek safety and find novelty. And we have idiosyncratic ways that we do it. We're idiosyncratic. Some of us are crazy out there idea people. Some of us are very much narrow, like you sounded like a connector. You put things together.
Right.
They're both original. They're both novel. They're both valuable. And I think that in order to really understand how humans perform in an AI environment, you need to be able to say Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen were amazing guitarists. They taught themselves how to play things nobody else had ever done. They were hyper original. But the next time you go out to blues club or a bar band, you'll hear somebody playing a Hendrix solo note for note. Perfect. That's originality too. It's just a different kind of originality. They're both valuable. And to me, the mission that I'm coming on to this show and other conversations is, if we can get people to understand that everybody has originality, that means that all of us have the superpower to do the things AI can't do, because AI creates sameness, humans create differentiation. So we call that metric originality, so that everybody can say, all right, I've got that. It's just a question of how. So I take the conversation about AI from you're all screwed to everybody can win. And it just changes the dynamic. And it's
I love where you're going there. And there's so many things that I want to unpack with you. One is I started Avenue 9 for the same reason that, like, if AI is trained on all of the world's information, the average salesperson misses quota. The average marketing is bad. And so if you shoot down the middle, that's one of the worst results for a marketing thing. Is like you're trying to be niche and specific, or you're trying to create some edges for people to get leverage in order to do stuff. And then also I wrote this book, Playful Humans. You can't see it, it's over my other shoulder, but where I talked about a lot about creativity. A quarter of the book was about creativity, this balance between order and chaos. And there's different types of thinking, from divergent problem solving, where you're trying to come up with as many different ways as possible to figure out, versus convergent, what's the one answer that's right to solve this problem. And then, like you said, there's other stuff where it's just, how can I connect two wildly different things? And what I think the research that I've been seeing is AI is really great at starting from a point and then going out in a narrow funnel. Like, it does create a lot of variations in novelty. Like you said, it's something new, but it's working from this like prompt, from this initial starting point where it has trouble. It's also pretty good at taking a wide variety of information and condensing it down to something that's interesting. But this kind of lateral movement is really hard for AI. And I think that's where humans have the advantage, in my opinion, is like, how do I take something from a different world and plug it into this world and go side to side with an idea?
It starts with the fundamental truth of the architecture of large language models, which is, in order for them to be functionally useful, they have to be probabilistic engines. They are probabilistic engines and are designed to provide information consistency. We get upset when we get an answer from AI that is nonsense. We call it hallucination. That's AI trying to diverge from the mean response. But if you and I and everybody watching, if we ask what's a use for a fork and we get 18,000 different answers, great. But at the end of the day, most people use a fork to eat. AI will tell you, use a fork to eat. And so definitionally, AI, Gen AI, as it currently is architected, will always tend towards similarity. And when it tries to be original, it, as you point out, it's just a probabilistic guess. It's not bound by anything. There's no feedback loop. There's no discussion about the value of the information. There's no discussion about how it'll make people feel. There's no discussion about utility. Those are all things that people do. So when you start to use AI as a substitute for the things that people consume, the things that people value, salience, you're running down an avenue that fundamentally it disempowers people. But frankly, from the standpoint of business, people aren't going to consume it. Look,
Yeah.
LinkedIn is a hellscape of nonsense now. How did that happen? Everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to be profound. God bless. I'm going to write a prompt. I'm going to get an answer from ChatGPT, and that looks clever, and I throw it up there. And you know what, folks? I used M dashes for years. You can't tell my stuff's real or not by whether or not I use an M dash. But guess what? If you read my stuff and it makes you think, then probably I wrote it. And
I
that's what
think
we're
there
doing.
is a lot of that. And when I talk about this idea too, I think about the AI can tell a story, but it can't tell your story. It doesn't have your individual context. And I love that's where your originality IQ comes in, is that
Yeah.
if I have a marketing agency, which I do, it can write a nice website copy for a marketing agency, but it can't write one for my agency unless it knows about me and I add my originality of who I am, what my expertise is, who I'm looking to help, and how I get that done. Like those are all the important original parts that makes my business different from any other business out there.
Exactly. And this is why, and this is the reason why my business exists, because you can use our originality infrastructure so that you can, for example, be monitoring yourself from time to time and saying, so how am I doing? Is how I approach originality eroding? Because what we see from the research, for example, is people do actually get cognitively limited if they use AI too much as a substitute for thinking.
Yeah, they get dumber and they start relying on it for the answers. Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
demonstrable. So it's a way to keep an eye on your cognitive health, but it's also a way to make sure you understand your winning strategy for problem solving. For example, you figured out over time that you solve problems by connecting dots, and that's your value add. And it was good you had teachers that made you feel good about yourself. Imagine if you could take a 5-minute test and it came out and said, guess what? Your originality superpower is you grind it out and make connections. You'd be like, yeah, I do. And you wouldn't feel crappy about yourself. You'd feel like that's my superpower. And then you'd orient yourself every day to augment your superpower. And that's the right way to approach work these days, but it's also the right way, frankly, to use AI. So if you know that your originality superpower is you tend to be very focal, which in our rubric is somebody who tends to be very mainstream focused, guess what? You're going to be very susceptible to AI work slop if you're not discriminating.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be focusing on, give me an answer, I'm done. So you got to be really thinking about, am I prompting this thing? Am I really pushing it? Are my originality scores changing as I use the AI? On the other hand, if you're an expander, you know what? You're going to be out in left field all the time. That's great, but you better have somebody around you who's a responsible adult who can say, Jonathan, that's great, but the client's not going to spend $10 million to paint the side of the Queen Mary. It's just not going to happen. You know?
Yeah. It's like sometimes we don't need another idea. We need execution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a servant leader. I learned early on in my career that being an autocratic leader was not authentic to me, and I couldn't play it off very well. So I realized that the way I'm wired, I like people to like me, and I like people to understand the mission, and I like giving them authority to get it back. And when you have that kind of mentality and you look at change that way, I was looking at the world and saying AI right now is being deployed as basically a very autocratic top-down model. It's Hunger Games. Use this or I fire you. Why can't you figure this out? And instead, servant leaders say, I'm going to give you authority to take back. Agile organizations or servant organizations, they didn't have a tool to basically figure out how to train their people so they would actually understand AI. And you know what they say, every entrepreneur builds a product to solve a problem that they have. I built a product to solve the problem that I wanted to solve if I was going to grow an organization. Yeah, that's how it relates to how you'd use it every day and how you'd basically use it to create a higher performing team of people that liked you because you were giving them an opportunity to flourish instead of feeling like they were being put upon, which is, I think, why most AI transformations right now are failing. Period. End of
Yeah.
story.
So I created this idea of a human plus AI matrix of there's some
Mhm,
things you want humans to do all the time. There's a bucket of things you want AI to do all the time. There's a bucket of
mhm,
things where human and AI are better together. And then there's a bucket of
mhm,
things in your business where you don't want either to do. They're just dumb things to do, or neither one is
mhm.
capable yet. And I think there's a
Right,
lot of hype that people are pitching that falls into that bucket of just stuff that's not possible yet, even though it's theoretically
right.
possible. When you think about the research that you've done, and especially with originality, what are some of those buckets in a business that you're like, oh, these are human, or these are definitely better with human plus AI, and will probably never or shouldn't be like 100% AI?
The way I look at it is if you accept a few sort of things in my world that I think are true, and I think are turning out to be more and more widely known every day. The first one is the AI is a sameness engine, which
Yeah.
means that it operates really well, providing efficiency. It's really good at efficiency, and it's getting better and better at efficiency. So it's going to always be really good at that. If you identify places in your organization where there's a need for differentiation, that's humans. So when I think, or my team think about business these days, think about the technology stack as being data, cybersecurity, network stuff, AI, and then original intelligence. And so it really, that strata between AI and humans, it's going to be a big part of your technology stack, but the degree is going to vary. So for example, in a function where you're doing a lot of report generation that or compliance work, a lot of that's likely going to be done by agents. It's heavily process oriented, it's rules based. AI will be really good at that, provided that at some point there's going to be at least a narrow layer of humans to watch the AI, manage the disputes that come up, and do some quality control. On the other hand, an industry like yours, where a lot of it really is the value add, you may use the tools to help you prepare your standard form of client presentation. Great, it's going to save you hours, but then you're going to spend an enormous amount of the time you've captured figuring out how to add value above the baseline. So the human
Right.
value add is very strong. So this again is one of the problems with AI transformation right now is our friends in the valley are providing it's like there's nothing other than the AI stack. So in answer to your question, which I did, I think that the closer an activity is to providing the differentiation level of a business, the more you're going to have people involved. So even if it's, look, I'm going to automate my help desk, cool. Take advantage of that to have 5 highly trained, empathetic people who are there on the phone when people are losing their minds because the agent's getting the right answer to get on the phone and be like, let me talk to you about your problem. And you can spend a half hour because you have enough time and they come away,
Yeah.
oh, what a great company. You know what I mean? That's what we're really getting at.
Yeah, I
It's
love
just,
that too. I think so many people think it's humans or AI, and it can
no,
be
it's not.
both. You can have both in customer service. And there are times when I want to talk to a human and times when I don't. And so I think all those are fair. I really like where you're coming at it. That's why I was excited to talk to you today,
Mm,
because I think so many people are missing that, like, it doesn't all need to be AI. And the part that you, I think, maybe even underestimated is also that AI is good at some repeatable work, but it also
mm.
hallucinates and it also drifts. And so I found that, like, it'll be really great at replicating some sort of structure for about 5 to 10 times, and then it just slowly starts creeping away from what you
This is-
wanted. And if you look back 6 months, you're like, this isn't anything like what I started with.
So this will crack you up. So earlier in the day, I use the tools. We use the tools a lot. We have our own incidents of the tools with our own data. And I'm getting ready for a meeting with a potential partner. And we have some prompts that we use to do competitive analysis or partnership analysis. The models run these things dozens of times. So I'm asking it to get ready for this meeting I'm having after you and I talk. And it gives me strategic analysis. And it's got what this other company does, what Upside does. And the description of Upside is it's a French company that operates primarily in the EU. And so there's a lot of opportunity for international expansion. And I'm thinking, no, we're not a French company. I'm pretty sure I incorporated in Delaware. I remember doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't speak French. And what the heck? So I put it, are you sure? I'm pretty sure Upside's not a French company. And it sends back, oh, you're right. My mistake.
Yeah,
Okay.
but when it just
Well,
flip-flops like that, it actually makes me even more upset, which is
mhm.
wild too, because you're just like, "Oh, you're right, I completely made that up. Let me go the other
Yeah,
direction." And you're like, "That's not helping.
that's not
There's
helping
no
me.
substance there. This is all just surface level." I do wanna
Yeah.
challenge you a little bit though and ask you a hard one before we get in here too far, because
Right. I'm ready.
I have a couple of hot takes. One is I do think that AI is creating original work, even if it learns from other things. Like I think copyright and intellectual property is dead because the value
Hmm.
of AI learns from a work and creates a new original work. If we call it original, as in not just copying and pasting, legally, I don't think you have a basis for originality. The other one is I at some point I think if AI can fake originality good enough, does it matter? And so we're getting to the point, or I think AI strategists will say that we will eventually get to a point where if it can fake an influencer's voice good enough, does it matter if it's original or not? And I'd love your take
Hmm.
on those two things, or whichever one you find is more important, because I see some of the output will be great and original. And do I care if AI wrote my movie script if it's a great movie and like I enjoyed it and that character wasn't actually there, but it just generated what I needed to see? I don't think
Hmm.
I do as far as that part of creativity. That's what artists and CGI just do by hand now. And so I don't think it matters. But at the same time, I also think that people do matter and that it won't ever be
Well, yeah.
all we need.
Let's close loop on that because I have a view that actually will reassure you and a lot of people. So, first of all, yes, the current versions of AI, and they are continuing to improve, are getting better and better at creating novelty, which we would define as originality. It's something above the mean. That is absolutely true. Right now, they're hallucinations, they're nonsense. Eventually, the models get better and better.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things that it's important to remember. The first one is it may look original to you, but it's original that's available to everybody. It's shared novelty. If
Right.
you get an answer, everybody gets that answer. And maybe so if you look at business and the ability to get paid in differentiation as giving people something they can't get from somewhere else, having an originality engine at scale just it may raise the bar on the level of shared knowledge, but it doesn't in fact create differentiation. It's anything other than ephemeral. And
I
Business
like
School
that.
101 teaches you that real competitive advantage comes from something that you control. So, yeah, AI will get better at generating scripts. That's great. But an AI may get better at simulating actors. That's great. But you described as something really important. People hate similarity. People
Mm,
hate commonplace. People hate what has happened in LinkedIn. People hate that they're seeing digital actors and actresses. People hate another Avengers movie. They hate it. Why? Because they're novelty seeking engines and we want to matter. So I believe that what will happen is that authenticity, human experience, human value add, demonstrable. For example, that song, it may be a nice song. We already do it. The whole auto tune thing. It's, oh, that's not Milli Vanilli. They didn't sing. Yeah, but it sounded good. But it wasn't them. Everybody starts hating on them.
yeah,
So,
I think it's both.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
both.
think again, maybe people think too binary in this, where it's
Right.
got to be one or the other. The example I use a lot of times is with food. Just because vending machine food exists doesn't mean I
Exactly.
don't want a private chef to come cook me a steak. Like they're two
Exactly.
different use cases. Sometimes a vending machine hits the spot if
Sometimes
I'm
it
just out
does.
somewhere, and you're like, "Hey, great." So they both have a use case, and I think there is a place where AI created content like has value, or you can apply it in a really cool and creative way. And other times where you know what, we're just going to want to go see a live stage play in New York, and I want to see this Stranger Things theater production with real people and no CGI. But the Stranger
Hmm.
Things Netflix show with all CGI is also cool, and they
Right.
can both exist, and they can both have an audience for stuff.
I think that I've been in the technology industry for a long time and I've worked in out of Silicon Valley during my career. And Silicon Valley is a really interesting culture of everybody getting excited about technology to the point where nothing else really matters but the technology. And past technological revolutions, social media, mini computers, so forth, there was never really a sense that it was anything other than a tool, an enablement tool.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've had a tool that the people that are excited about it, some of them are just absolutely convinced that eventually their tool is going to become transcendent and aware. And there's nothing more important than that. There's nothing more important than achieving digital transcendence. And I think that when you're in love with the technology and you really just believe in your heart that you're doing the right thing, you can't entertain a narrative that's anything other than your amazing tool is the most important thing. And I think that the way AI is being presented in our society is not, I don't think it may be capitalistic. We can have a conversation on Marxism today about whether or not that makes sense, but it's hyper capitalistic. But at the end of the day, a lot of people that are pursuing AI and deploying it this way are not doing it because they want to destroy society. They're doing it because they're helping society. But the way it's being portrayed, it makes people feel disabled. You know what I mean? Because
I think that's part of it. For me, I just wonder about how it plays out. I think people know their value. I think a lot of people will be able to figure it out, and it will, despite reports from Silicon Valley, be slow enough that some people push back, just like with social media, and they go, you know what? I don't need to be on Facebook all day. It doesn't have that value to me anymore. So I'm wondering how you think it'll play out here within our lifetimes. If we played 30 years into the future, I think there has to be some sort of peak content. There has to be some sort of AI before that technology and hype starts coming down. And everybody else keeps saying, oh, it's just going to take off, like you said, to super intelligence and keep going. But if we look at other things like social media or even the internet or television, there was a peak television in the 90s. And then no, it got worse. Reality TV made it worse. And now more interesting content is happening on YouTube or on streaming services than on broadcast television. But what's your take? How do you see it play out over the next 30 years?
So I think the first thing we should really address is that we are in the middle of an overinvestment bubble, like we were with the internet bubble and we were with social media. It's just the nature of the way capital markets and society works. When you make investment decisions based upon return, there's always a pool of capital wherever the hottest thing is. And it's exacerbated by the dollars that are required to develop and deploy these Gen AI models are so complex, they're so expensive to run. It's causing a massive pooling of capital. And people say sooner or later the quote bubble will burst. Yeah, it probably will. At some point, maybe it'll be what's going on in the oil markets right now. Maybe it'll be when it becomes obvious that AI on its own can't solve all problems. There will be an adjustment. The hypothetical building to forever that sort of support the spending on the big AI companies' infrastructure, somewhere along the way, investor sentiment will change. It's inevitable. But what we learned from the internet bubble and the social media bubble and the housing bubble and on is that after the bubble ends, society is irreparably changed. So AI, as it currently exists, what will likely happen is some of the models will maintain, some of the businesses will maintain, I would bet on Google more than, say, a privately funded startup because they have access to customers. But AI is now baked in. It's just a question of degree. I think that what will likely happen is AI and the LLMs and Gen AI will start to branch into higher and lower capabilities depending upon people's ability to pay. I think that AI will become a scarce good at the highest level, just like supercomputers were years ago. I think that AI has the potential of significantly stratifying our society into haves and have-nots based upon their access to artificial intelligence. So I think that AI is going to challenge our society more than any other thing. And I don't know how it's going to end up because I think it's largely going to be the hands of people and what they want out of a society.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we deal with those things. I'm with you. I think that at some level, I could also see things flipping a little bit
Mm,
where stuff like the trades or things where you actually need a human to do a task
absolutely.
all of a sudden becomes
Mhm.
a lot more valuable and
Valuable.
pays a lot more than
Exactly.
a white
Exactly.
collar middle management job that is traditionally paid a lot more.
That's exactly right. I think there
It
was
could be both
it,
ways.
I think you're right. I like South Park, whatever that says about me. And there was an episode a couple seasons ago where AI comes and takes everybody's jobs, and the only people that are left in South Park, they're employable, the handyman, and how capitalism it turned on its head. And of course, it's South Park, so it's completely just scatological. But the point was that in a world of AI, that handyman who could screw in a light bulb suddenly became the most important person in South Park. And I think you're right. I think that there is the handyman, the craftsperson, the person who can make human contact. There's going to
Yeah.
be an enormous premium on the part of human authenticity and experience like we've never seen before. And if you mentioned earlier intellectual property and copyright, I think one of the things we're going to have to really think about as society is how do we provide people with the ability to protect their originality so they can get paid for it? And
Yeah,
that's a
and
big
I
one.
think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be I've talked to some other experts to the previous podcast. We talked about the data that I think we're going to have to come up with some sort of system if we want to protect it of
Mhm.
paying people for their data and their creation and their conversations
Yeah.
versus their output because the output doesn't matter anymore. Any tool can make the output or the
Mhm.
copy. It needs to be about like the effort, the data, the original conversation that you and I just had is the
Mhm.
important part. And then if anybody wants to leverage this or anyone wants to turn it into a different piece of content, go have at it as long as
Right.
they're paying us for that information and
Yeah.
originality, which would be great.
Look, I'm just all I wanted to say is just as a bottom line for me is I'm a capitalist, man. I started this company because I want to make money. I want to make money. I believe in capitalism. So raising these issues doesn't mean I'm against AI. I'm
Yeah.
for AI. But I think it's important for us as citizens to not allow ourselves to be disabled. There's more than one way to grow like an economy around AI. We're presented right now like it's an only the choice is get out of the way and just let it take everybody's jobs. And that's the only answer. And the answer is no, actually, you can be for capitalism and have distributed models where individuals get benefited from their efforts. Or you could say, you know what? Yes, Department of Defense should always have the best AI to protect us, but not every AI company has to do business with Department of Defense. It doesn't make them bad people. We need to have a more nuanced conversation, in my opinion.
I agree. And thank you for having that conversation with us today. Last one for you is tell us
Yeah.
about Hupside and how you're going to make money and make value for people with that. How can you help us and how can we help you? Again, the website is
Well,
hupside.com and you can
upside.com.
find Jonathan on LinkedIn or just Jonathan at hupside.com.
Listen, that's exactly right. You can help me. You can help me by helping yourselves. This company was and is about creating a platform and a way for every one of us to be able to be better leaders, grow organizations, figure out how to train or advocate for ourselves. It doesn't matter. We're literally Kleenex and everybody's got a cold now. And the cold is, what the hell do I do to add value in a world of AI? And this provides a way to answer that question. You go to the site, Mike mentioned it. What we've done is we've open sourced two examples of the product that you can just use as much as you want. The first one is the OAQ challenge. You can just go and figure out what your original intelligence is. It's free. Play it as much as you want. I guess my time is up. And then the other thing is the website, we also have a version of the product that you can use with less than 10 people for free. So use it and tell me what you think of it. And if you think it's useful, it's a movement. Let's make it happen. I'll make plenty of money selling my product to companies, and you can use the product to make yourself feel better, and we can change the conversation. That's how you can help me.
I love it. And I love that you're looking at ways to monetize and document originality. I've talked to other people that are trying to figure out how to value and reward creation and original thought or actual humans' opinions and stuff. And I think that's going to be really important work as we go forward. And for
Yeah.
Avenue 9, like I said, if you want help doing that for your marketing, that's basically what I do. I'll come interview your founder, your top salesperson, your best clients, get the human input and your original thought in order to create better, more original marketing with AI. I'm not anti AI either. The deal is we apply the AI where it makes sense to amplify your authenticity and your voice and reach more people. So if that sounds like you, go to avenue9.com. Until next time, keep going.